In this video we're going to swap a traditional switch for a dimmer switch. Before fitting one of these you have to ensure that the lamps on the circuit are dimmable. You can also only have one dimmer switch on a lighting circuit, so if you have a two-way lighting arrangement where it can be switched on and off from two positions, you can only actually fit one of these. It can only be dimmed from the one position. I'm now at the consumer unit. I'm going to switch off the correct circuit breaker, which is for the upstairs lights. I'm now going to lock that off using a lock-off device. This will prevent anybody from switching it back on. I'm then going to lock that off using a padlock. And then finally I'm just going to put a notice on the front there telling people not to switch it back on. Before you install a dimmer, you need to check that your back box is deep enough to accommodate the actual thickness of the dimmer. These are a couple of millimeters thicker than an actual switch. You can see the switch there compared to that, and that probably sticks out another 10 millimeters more than what the single switch does. So you have to be careful and ensure that the back box is deep enough to accommodate the dimmer. So we've now isolated the electric. We're now going to remove the screws. And then we're just going to pull that forwards. I'm now going to carefully expose the earth wire. I'm now going to use an approved voltage tester to test that this is dead before we touch any of the terminals. So before I use the tester, I'm going to test that it's working okay by pressing the auto test function. I'm then going to test that the leads are in good condition by doing a continuity test. So I'm going to touch the two leads together and then press the button. And you can see that they are working fine. We can now do a test on this to ensure that it is dead. So I'm going to put the probe on the earth wire, and then I'm going to probe the top terminal. And then I'm going to probe the bottom two terminals. And then we're just going to test between the wires. So I'll test between the common and the L2 and the common and the L1. And the tester isn't lighting up at all there, so we can safely say that that is isolated. We now need to test the machine is still working. So I'm going to press the auto test button, and then I'm going to test the leads are still in good condition by touching them together and pressing the continuity test. So we can now safely say that that is isolated safely. So we can see that the brown goes into common, the grey goes into L2 and the black goes into L1. So we need to write that down. If all of your three wires are the same colour, it's important that you label these up with some masking tape before you remove any of them. We can now undo the terminals. And then we can remove the switch. The new dimmer switch has slightly different symbols. It has that squiggly line with an arrow through, an L2 and an L1. The squiggly line with the arrow through is the common terminal. So we're now going to put the brown into the common terminal. The black wire into L1. And then the grey wire into L2. Now we've done that, we're just going to pull on the wires to ensure that they are firmly fixed in the terminals. You will notice that this is a plastic back box. It's quite common to have a metal one. If you have a metal one, it would normally be earthed. If it's not earthed, you do have to be very careful about the type of dimmer that you fit. You should only fit a plastic one. Never go fitting a metal switch to a circuit that is not earthed. So we can now carefully push that back in there. You can see that that was a good fit. There was no squeezing or anything. The back box is plenty deep enough for the dimmer. You can now insert both screws and tighten them up. can now remove the notice, I can undo the padlock, and then I can undo the lock-off device, and then switch the circuit back on. So we can now come and switch the dimmer on by pressing it. The lamp is now on. If we turn that to the right, it will increase the brightness. Turn it to the left, it will dim. And to switch it off again, simply press it. So that's how to replace a standard light switch with a dimmer switch.